Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how I managed to switch careers into tech in my late 20s with zero technical background. But today I am a senior security engineer and it was a very long journey, but I'm here to share all the details so that maybe if you're thinking about switching careers, or maybe you're interested in cybersecurity, but you feel behind or that you're late, or if you don't have a CS degree or a tech background, maybe it feels like it's impossible. I'm going to share all the details about how I managed to do it. Hopefully this will help you. So, what did I do before I got into the tech industry? I did my undergrad at UCLA and I was pre-med. I thought that I would become a surgeon, which is so laughable now considering the work that I do, but I actually did breast cancer research there and I left with a few co-authored publications. I also worked for an eye surgeon after college because I was preparing to go to medical school, and somewhere along the way I just lost interest in medicine. It's a long story. I was very disheartened by the insurance industry, and we'll leave it at that. After that, I still really wanted to help people, so I felt like pivoting into therapy made the most logical sense. I really like to sit with people and hear their stories and help people work through whatever is blocking them mentally. This was all just natural skill and ability that I felt like I had. So I decided to go to grad school for clinical psychology and become a therapist. I ended up working at an inpatient treatment center, and that was a very eye-opening experience. Let's put it at that. It was very emotionally heavy, just working with people who were suffering mentally, just across the spectrum, every kind of disorder. I don't like calling them disorders. I don't know how to phrase that, but you get the point. I really enjoyed working in that field, but it was just so emotionally heavy. And I would just take that stuff home with me all the time. It was a lot. And I just couldn't leave it at work. So I started to really think about whether this is something I could sustain long term. Why did I consider tech with no tech experience? I had some exposure to the tech industry and startup culture, and not gonna lie, I think it was the ping pong tables and kombucha on tap that sold me. I was just intrigued by the concept of software engineering and just building innovative technology. Like, that really just lit me up. It just made me so excited to think, oh, I can work with new technologies. Why wouldn't I want to contribute to that? It sounds super cool and interesting. And I'm someone who, I have a lot of curiosity about just anything and everything. Don't look at my Google searches. My husband always jokes that he doesn't want to look at my Google searches because I want answers. I digress. So I had no idea where to even begin with that. I remember being in class at night during grad school for clinical psychology, and there was this class of girls, women, and they were all on computers. It didn't look like they were doing what we were doing, and I was super curious. So randomly one night I ran into one of the girls coming out of the classroom and I was like, what are you guys doing in there? She told me it was a coding boot camp, and I was like, what? A coding boot camp, you say? That kind of stimulated my mind, like, oh, I want to do what they're doing. That sounds really interesting. I was also getting really bored in class during grad school. I would literally fall asleep. I don't know why, but this is a historical issue for me where I fall asleep in lectures. In hindsight, I think it's just that it was not interesting enough to me. So that's part of the reason why I was like, oh, like, this is another path that I could take. I just wanted to see if I could learn it. It's interesting growing up as a woman who's not pushed into the technical field. All I knew was doctor or lawyer, the typical two like Asian careers that are acceptable. I also started learning more about like space technology, and all in all, I was driven by curiosity. How did I actually start learning? So while I was working at the inpatient treatment center, I started learning how to code at night and on the weekends on Codecademy. I feel like it's the OG, but I started learning the basics and just slowly building confidence. I just needed to see if it clicked with me or not. And it did. I was so interested in it. It was so stimulating for me. It just scratched an itch that I didn't even know I had. So that was really cool to slowly discover about myself. I don't think I ever sucked at school. I just wasn't learning the right things that were interesting to me. After building confidence over time, I went from Codecademy, then I started doing Freecodecamp and just continued to see like how far can I get before I really hit a wall, and that wall just never came for me. So I decided to enroll in a part-time coding bootcamp. I worked full-time, but would go to class at nights and on the weekend. That was a lot. There were days where I would leave the house at like 5 in the morning and I wouldn't get home until like 10 p.m. at night. Luckily, I was riding motorcycles at this time in LA, and that just made it really easy for me to just zip around. But that's a whole other topic I'll discuss one day. It was a lot. I had to hustle. I was so busy constantly and super tired, but I loved it. I loved the journey, and I was doing the thing that I wanted to do. That made it bearable. How did I switch industries while working full-time and land my first role in the tech industry? After the boot camp, I did not expect that I would get a job right away. If anything, I was terrified that I would never find something. The boot camp was super helpful in just pointing me in the right directions for the things I needed to learn, and it taught me a lot of shortcuts and stuff, but it didn't actually help me build the depth that I needed to be successful in the field. So that's where a lot of my insecurity about getting a job came from. I just kept applying for things and constantly thought about like, how can I segue into the tech industry with my clinical psych background? So eventually I discovered that I could volunteer for this nonprofit organization called Wonder Woman Tech. They hosted tech conferences every year, and I had gone to one of the Wonder Woman Tech conferences about 2 years prior. I loved it and it was super inspiring, so I reached out to see if I could volunteer as a web developer for them, and it worked out and I got to do that for a little bit. That at least allowed me to put something on my resume, and that's the only objective I had at that point, was just try to do something instead of nothing, because at that point I had also already quit my last job. So while I was volunteering for the Wonder Woman Tech organization, I attended one of the Wonder Woman Tech conferences live and sat at the speaker guest check-in. So I was checking in guests, and one of the people that showed up was a woman who had this great headshot. I uploaded her photo to the website, and when I saw her live in person, I already knew her by her first name, so I greeted her by her first name and let her know that I thought her headshot was fabulous. We just kind of hit it off, and I ended up going to one of her talks, and I left so inspired. I just loved her energy. I was like, I need to work where that woman is. So I ended up going down to her company's booth in the expo hall afterwards and submitted my information, and one thing led to another. I reached out to her on LinkedIn, and I got an interview for a kind of tech support role, but I was like, hey, I'll take it. That's essentially how I got my first tech job. It wasn't anything related to engineering. It wasn't what I set out to do, but it was at least a foot in the door, and I think that's super important on the journey from a non-technical to a technical career. Sometimes you just kind of have to bite the bullet and just find a way in, especially in this day and age. It is so difficult. I know how difficult it is. I see it firsthand that it's not easy for people to get through the door. So sometimes starting out at a lower role can help you get where you want to be long term. So it's all about playing the long game, and I've played the long game a lot for a long time, and it's always worth it. How did I actually break into cybersecurity? So the company I was working at, it was essentially a startup, and with startups, it's so lean that I had the opportunity to get my hands into like everything. I was helping like the tech support team, I was doing my job, then I was also helping QA, and then eventually I connected with the engineering manager of the security team at the time. We bonded over our love for motorcycles, and I let him know about my experience with coding, and he thought it was great. One day, my manager comes to me and she says that the security team needs help and they were asking for me by name. That was really cool. It was so unexpected, but it goes to show you never know what can come from the people you meet. So it's super important. Just meet people and get to know them, and don't use them as a ladder, but just, it's called networking, you know? When I first started helping the security team, I was given small tasks like doing security awareness training and running phishing campaigns, and the more that I learned about it, the more my curiosity grew. So it wasn't the software engineering that I had initially planned to go and do, but it ended up being far more interesting to me than just software engineering. So I started studying cybersecurity in my free time. I used the Rochester Institute of Technology course when I first started learning because I had saw someone else who had pivoted careers use that course. I also got a scholarship through the SANS Diversity Academy. I had applied and sent in like a video talking about like why I was interested in security and stuff, and through that scholarship, I actually managed to do 3 cybersecurity certifications that typically cost like $8,000 each. I got them all for free. I will post a link about that in my description. It was a great resource. I highly recommend it. It's specifically for minorities, but yeah, you can look into the details of that if you're interested. With all of this journey, there was never a roadmap of like, okay, you need to do X, Y, Z. Like, everyone's journey is going to be different. I worked closely with their most senior security engineer at the time, and he gave me a lot of advice and feedback on what I needed to learn, and I would take his feedback and I would learn it, and then I would come back and I would be like, what's next? Give me more, please. I think he liked the work that I was doing for them because eventually I actually got hit up by the QA engineering manager to see if I had interest in becoming a QA engineer because I had helped them a handful of times. When I told my security engineering mentor about the situation, because he knew that I really wanted to do security, but I wasn't going to wait to get my foot into engineering. Like, I just needed to get into engineering. That's what I wanted to do. He somehow managed to intervene, and I remember him asking me if he could tell his manager about my offer. So when I talked to the recruiter about the QA engineer role, she was like, okay, so it looks like we're looking at 2 roles for you. And I was like, excuse me, 2? What? It turned out that they had opened a role just for me and in security, if that wasn't obvious. But yeah, so they opened the security role for me, and that was really that was so sweet and awesome because it was so unexpected. But between the two, I was like, I want to be in security. There's no question about it. So yeah, I officially signed my life away to the security side, and now we're here. I remember just feeling so relieved when that finally happened, because I had been working for years at this point to break into engineering, and I did it. I finally did it. Everything that I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into, it finally paid off, and it still blows me away sometimes. What am I doing now? It has been 4.5 years since I got that initial offer to join the security team. And in between those 4.5 years, I also got my master's degree in cybersecurity. And that was a whole other journey. And that's in another video that I have. I am also now working at another startup-ish company. I don't know if it counts as a startup, but I'm working in sports technology. Super fun, super crazy. I like to call it incident response bootcamp. I was actually recently promoted to senior security engineer about 5 months ago. I will say working at a startup is the fastest way to grow. Let me tell you, the things that I have been through, the ways that I have been stretched, it definitely forces exponential growth, because you're wearing so many hats at one time. It is not for the faint of heart. I'm managing security across multiple domains. I will dive into what exactly I do in another video. What are the biggest lessons that I learned along the way? First piece of advice is that people want to help you, especially if you're driven. So don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no way to get to where you want to be by yourself. Most people in this industry, and I think in general, people are so willing to help if you just ask and actually listen to the advice they give you and put it into action and then come back for more. If you're really serious about something and you want to know more, people will help you. So don't be afraid. Communication matters far more than you think. My background in clinical psychology and therapy has helped me tremendously, because I'm not the most technical person in the room. I hate saying that out loud. I'm really not. I have an undergrad degree in anthropology, and I feel so behind because there are so many engineers that are just phenomenal at what they do, and I barely scratch the surface. But what I do have is insane grit and will and discipline. I might not be the smartest person in the room, but I am going to be the hardest worker. I'm going to give 110%, and I'm going to be super empathetic and fun along the way. And that is how I've gotten by. I enjoy working with people, and I enjoy making things fun. I think that is what has gotten me through interviews, because in another video I'll also talk about the technical interview that I had to do for my current role. Whew, bombed that. I'll just say that technical / coding interview ended with the interviewer saying, "I could tell that you really tried." I really did try, and I really did fail, but I still got the job, so that was really cool. Next lesson that I learned is that being resourceful is far better a skill to have than credentials. I don't have a computer science degree. No one handed me a roadmap on how to get into this career. You have to figure that out for yourself. And that's just with anything in life. Being resourceful is the number one skill that you need to have, that I wish I kind of processed and really integrated into my being really early on, because that is primarily what being a security engineer is, and I think engineering in general. You're just standing things up out of thin air, trying to solve problems that don't have answers. Can you imagine just every day of your life you're just solving problems that you don't have the answer to? That is kind of what I do. I always say it's like putting pipes together. But it really is. It's like putting a puzzle together, except that all the puzzle pieces are scattered all over the internet. And yeah, that sums up what being an engineer is. Just looking for puzzle pieces all over the internet. Last lesson that I learned is that integrity and humility are just non-negotiable. Being in this industry requires a lot of humility, and it also just involves doing the right thing and always leaning towards trying to do the right thing. Like, the more integrity you have, the more respect you will get from the people around you. Having humility is super important because you're going to be wrong sometimes. You're going to make mistakes. People will be more willing to help you and work cohesively with you if you have humility and just can put your swords down. And full circle back to just the people skills. You're always going to have to work with people. And so the better you are at communicating and building rapport and building relationships and making work enjoyable, like, you'll get so much further. So this is the end of the video, and I hope that you got some value out of it. Whether you're thinking about switching careers or just trying something new or different, I think the takeaway that I want you to have is that there isn't going to be a clear roadmap. You kind of have to go and figure it out, and everyone's journey is going to look different, but it's not impossible if you just don't stop. It took me like 3 years, I think, to make the official switch into the career that I really wanted, because I started the coding bootcamp when I was 25, turning 26, and then I got my first job at 28. If this video helped you, please let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to continue making more videos on whatever topics you guys might be interested in. I feel like I've spent the last decade buried in books, but now I'm ready to just kind of dump out all that knowledge back. You can also follow my journey on social media, which I will link in the description below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.